It's time for another TCC event breakdown in the heavyweight class. And, as of this upload, as of when you're watching this, we are now just a few short days away from the third stop in the Extreme Robots 2023 season happening over in the Venture Arena. But before we get to there, we got to talk about that second stop. Obviously, if you watched our video in May, we saw Team Quake rise up the ranks. Robots like Galactus and Tectonic shoot way far up in the TCC overall rankings. But where do they sit right now in the rankings? Have any robots shot up along with them? Have any robots gone down to the pits with robots such as Doom and Glitch? We'll have to find out on this TCC breakdown of Extreme Robots in Guildford. Stay tuned.
Oh my God! Wow! This is the biggest flame we've ever seen.
Has preserved enough energy to get in the flip on Carbine. We're going to go all the way.
Oh my God! That's gonna hurt!
Grab the milk, Jenny!
Welcome to the Combot Collective.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another TCC Breakdown episode here. Of course, this is the Combot Collective, bringing everything you want to know from the world of robot combat, from the heavyweight class to the fleaweight class, from BattleBots to the UK live circuit today. I'm your host, as always, Sterling Brown, aka Corey 300 on a lot of robot combat communities. And, we discussed in the intro, this is the second stop on the Extreme Robot season. If you haven't watched it already, I would advise before you check out this one, maybe check out, we'll have it linked up right here in this corner, the May breakdown episode for the first Extreme Robots 2023 event of the season. That May event, their first ever time in Brentwood, it was a pretty fun event. We saw some banger fights such as Galactus versus Aftershock, Eruption versus Tectonic. And speaking of Tectonic, that robot really, the cream rose to the crop in May. That machine went 6-0, while we also saw Galactus, who we just discussed, going 2-0. Both those robots went way up the TCC rankings, found themselves in the top 20. Not so good for them this time around, I will say that without saying too much. But if you do really want to just go ahead and get down to the nitty-gritty with what we're talking about here today with this Guildford June rundown, put it simple, if you're new to Extreme Robots, it is essentially the second largest touring robot combat competition for heavyweights in the world behind BattleBots, of course. It is pretty much the heart and soul of UK robot combat and has been pretty much since Robot Wars first shut down back in 2004. It first went by the name Roaming Robots, then it took the name Robot Wars Live, and now it's Extreme Robots. We've seen numerous legendary machines really start and develop their careers here. Robots such as Maelstrom, Ripper, Eruption, Envy, Aftershock, Two-Headed Death Flamingo, Thor, numerous robots, Beast as well. A lot of these machines all, really cut their chops, made themselves iconic machines through this UK live tour series. It's been around forever, and it offers one of the biggest cash prizes out of any competitive heavyweight scene, probably outside of BattleBots now, I would say, and that is the winning team at the end of the year does get a £5,000 cash prize. It is a 4-team competition. The 4 teams are Inferno, Divinity, Quake, and the brand new team Wolfpack. As we discussed in our last May episode, Quake does lead by 3 shows after sweeping Brentwood. Not so lucky here. That's another thing we'll get to. We got a lot of robots to talk about here. 27 in total over 3 shows of competition. 3 Extreme Robots title defenses, and we even saw a new secondary title introduced, the Spinners title. We'll get to that more pretty shortly, I would say. And let's get ahead and jump into it. But first, as always on the Combot Collective, as we now get closer and closer to the end of our giveaway season, we got to keep shouting them out. Our friends and sponsors here at the Combot Collective, robotsroomlive.com. If you're a UK fan and you want to buy some merch from some American teams, perhaps this is the place you want to go check out. robotsroomlife.com is the merchandise provider for numerous East Coast robot combat teams in both the world of NHRL and BattleBots. You can find BattleBots merchandise for machines such as Ripperoni, Shredder-Bro, and Starchild on the website. And you can find NHRL merchandise that comes from the House of Havoc in there. You can find Milk Take merchandise. You can find Wake and Bake merchandise, numerous other Team Shredded and Omega Team robots. You can also find some robotsruinmylife.com specific apparel, like their tote bags, their t-shirts, their prints, their buttons, their stickers. You can find all sorts of fun stuff here. My personal favorite, probably that Ripperoni pizza box. It's such a fun, unique item to get. I would definitely check it out. You can get poker chips there. You can get pretty much anything a Robot Combat fan would want. If you're in the US or the UK, you want to expand your collection, check out robotsruinmylife.com. And if you want to expand your collection for free, please check out the giveaway linked in the description below. It's a giveaway where we're partnering with robotsruinmylife.com to give away to all of you some fun stuff. We are celebrating the halfway point of the NHRL season right now here at the Combot Collective. And to celebrate it, we're giving away a Wake and Bake t-shirt, medium in size, green in color, alongside some Robots Ruin My Life and TCC stickers. So you'll get your Pori Loves Bloodsport stickers. You'll get your TCC Vintage logo stickers. You'll get some Omega Team stickers, some Robots Ruin My Life stickers. It's an awesome bundle, and it's all free. You just got to sign up and follow us on some social media pages. That's in the link below. But let's quit talking. We got a lot of UK machines to discuss here. A lot of shifting in the TCC overall rankings. We'll be looking at that fairly soon in the coming weeks. Let's get into it here. Talk about Extreme Robots Guildford 2023. So with our May rundown, we put the free agents off at the end, but we decided to kick it off with the free agents this time. As it turns out, our most successful Extreme Robots competitor this month would come out of this unique group. Like we mentioned during our last rundown video, all these robots in the free agent class are not part of the 4 main Extreme Robots team rosters, but that very well may change after 2 impressive performances by TV veterans Sabretooth and Donald Thump. Both of these robots collectively went 0-3 at Brentwood with 3 knockouts, but Sabretooth, after a win over Austria's Scrappy, would put it back to a 500 record on the TCC ranking calendar, while Donald Thump, who had dug a little bit of a bigger hole for itself in comparison, had probably the best performance in its half-decade career here in Guildford. The President of Pain had been a joke at pretty much every single event we've seen it in post-COVID, with the weapons sometimes not even operating for fights. But man, that spinning bar was going full throttle in the Guildford Center. In its first fight, it challenged the returning GBO Nemesis, a robot which had not competed since 2020. A robot which had not competed since 2019. And just as quickly as this robot had come out of retirement, it went right back into retirement, as within seconds of this first fight, Donald Thump had busted Nemesis' weapon and then followed it up with 3 more brutal strikes to the side of the horizontal spinning bot. These impacts were enough to force GBO Nemesis to drop out of the remaining shows that weekend and even drop out of competition altogether. Shortly after the festivities at Guildford had concluded, the team would announce on social media that GBO Nemesis would go back into retirement, as the team is starting to prepare a brand new design for heavyweight competition. Best of luck to them. Hopefully it's a little bit more reliable. But now let's talk about Scrappy, who we've already brought up a couple of times this episode. We've discussed Scrappy before on Robot Combat Tonight in the last few episodes, and I was very excited to see Austria's sole 250-pound combat team compete once again in the sport. And while they had plenty of reps for those 3 fights, those rounds certainly did not transform into any sort of reliability or weapon success. In those 3 fights, Scrappy suffered 3 knockout losses, pushing it down 24 points on the TCC rankings, nearly shoving the Austrian vert immediately to the doldrums of the group. The team did confess in an interview before the event that the robot had not been tested at all in build-up to this competition, so that likely played a major factor here. Hopefully they gathered some significant intel, some knowledge about the robot, what makes it work, what makes it doesn't work moving forward. I want to see the Austrian team compete more. I love international robots. And speaking of moving forward, barely moving at all were 2 robots from 2 very different eras in Leviathan and Leveler 2 Mark 4.5. Now, Leviathan, like we mentioned in our last rundown, the robot formerly known as Capers, looked better, but still really didn't perform better. Going 0-2 in a pair of Fight Club melees, the same position as one Leveler 2 Mark 1.5, a robot we have not seen since the year 2016 when Team Ballistics originally bought the machine. The weapon and drive may have been even worse than one Titan who we saw last month. Leveler 2, Mark 1.5, suffered 3 losses, and now it seems like this robot is back to the shed. But that's our FAs out of the way. Let's now get to our 4 main teams fighting for the 5,000 pound prize at the end of our championship season. And while these robots are not free agents, it's hard to say they did much better than the likes of Leveler 2 and Leviathan, to be brutally honest. We're going to first talk about the machines of Team Divinity, headed by Roaming Robots and the Team Saint crews. This team has not won a stop since the very first weekend of the team format all the way back in April 2022, and it shows, honestly. I mean, outside of Zadkiel, there is not really anything going correctly for the 7 machine crew right now. And starting with the Extreme Robots Legends of Team Roaming Robots, once again for Divinity, it seems the fate of all these yellow and green fighting machines would be inversed compared to what we saw and witnessed in Brentwood. We start off with Ripper 7, a robot once partially intended for BattleBots was really looking like a shell of its hopes and potential after an abysmal May, which saw it lose to the likes of Manta and Ignition. But after one strong Fight Club melee performance where it defeated robots such as Thunderchild, and one of the best fights of the entire weekend against Implosion, things looked much better for John Finlay's new creation, which left Guildford at 2-0 over the weekend. So while the newer, sleeker Ripper 7 and its successfully working anti-axe attachment swam, Ripper 6 was honestly sinking like a ship. Once the inaugural Extreme Robots champion, the 6th iteration of the Ripper family has only regressed more and more since its respectable performance in Dublin last October. It did manage to take out Brutus, but other flipping machines such as Ironaut 8, TR4, and even Thunderchild would all manage to do Ripper 6 in over the weekend. And Galactus, the robot that went 2-0 with 2 KOs in May, it ended up falling here to Brutus in a knockout in what would be its only fight of the entire event. Something I don't think any of us expected given just how wicked it looked only a month ago. Overall, the Finlay trio would go a combined 3 wins with 4 losses. Not terrible, I guess, but you know that the team is looking for a bounce-back performance in July. But hey, I mean, once again, despite the struggles of the Ripper family, this is really not the team we should be blaming here over these 3 shows. Nope. This would instead fall into the hands of our captaining squad, Team Saint, and their sportsman robots. As collectively, the Robot Wars fan favorite Gabriel and longtime live event competitor Saint would go over the weekend 0 wins and 11 losses. Yes, I did not stutter. 0 for 11. Now look, I love Craig Colias. He is a fantastic driver. We wouldn't have beasts like Zadkiel, Bobby, Wumbo, and of course our BattleBots runner-up Huge without him. But things have honestly just been unfortunate since these last 2 years for the most part. I mean, we haven't seen Gabriel win a single fight in the 2 years we have been doing the TCC overall rankings. And Saint, well, shit. I mean, we've already seen that robot fly out of the arena twice. Things have not been good for the Twackbots in Team Divinity. I really hope they can improve, but without the pit or any sort of, damage category or any way to break weapons, I just don't see it happening. But hey, fear not. When all else fails in the world of Team Divinity, this team does have one secret weapon, which very well may be mightier than any other robot in Extreme Robots right now. And of course, you know who we're talking about here. Ever since that shaky first event of April 2022, Zadkiel has been one of the most unstoppable forces in the 250-pound class and could be a sneaky pick to end our season as the TCC #1 ranked robot. For whatever reason, it would miss the May competition for Extreme Robots, despite the robot being packed and ready, as we saw on social media. But it definitely was here, and oh boy, did Zadkiel show up. Extreme Robots at this event would introduce a secondary defendable title called the XR Spinners Championship, a self-explanatory title which I assume will operate under full combat rules. And perhaps there was no better way to crown this champion than in a match between 2 of Extreme Robots' most prominent spinners in Zadkiel and Aftershock. This has been one of the biggest rivalries in the sport over the last year, and like many fights in this rivalry, we would see the Violent Angel leave on top via knockout to take the Spinners Championship home. So that's 3-12 for Team Divinity down. From our 4th place team, we now jump upwards a little bit to discuss the 2nd best crew coming out of June, the surprisingly small Team Inferno. I already brought it up on Robot Combat Tonight just over a week ago, but with only 5 robots on this team's roster during the June competition, things just felt a little weird and unbalanced for the Team Invade-led roster. And despite it, I definitely say, though, that things managed to improve this month for the crew. Michael Oates confessed before the event to press that the team has pretty much spent 100% of their time improving Implosion exclusively between events, but this sacrifice certainly seemed to pay off, with all their machines now operating at a similar level, a level which got our Extreme Robots 2022 champions 1 point to show for at this event. So, like I mentioned, only 4 robots, and let's quickly discuss Beast here first, who we went over during our last breakdown with much disappointment after numerous internal issues, and sadly, things were just not much different here for the former live event powerhouse. Beast did manage 1 victory in a tag match where it beat fellow low tiers Weird Malice and Saint, but outside that, failed to do much at all once again, even losing a pre-show Fight Club melee before event number 1. But now let's jump over to the Team Invade robots, the real stars of the show here, and take a look at the aforementioned Implosion. The serious time under the shell was a serious gamble for the Oates family, but one which would pay off, as Implosion was honestly one of the most impressive robots of this entire event. It put together 4 wins and 3 losses, which looks just respectable on paper, but what is hidden in those stats are those 4 victories. They all came back to back to back to back, with the losses coming during Implosion's start and ending exclusively here. Like we mentioned, the X-Bot had an absolute barn burner versus Ripper 7, which it only came up short in because of battery issues. But I would say Implosion's big win over the weekend would be in a 3-way melee over Gabriel and the former top-ranked Extreme Robots machine Tectonic, where it took the win via a judge's decision by controlling fashion. But now let's get to them highlight flippers on the Extreme Robots roster, the ones we all know and love, the sport's best active front hinge Ignition and the former TCC number 2 ranked robot Eruption. Ignition's performance was a substandard one for the former Extreme Robots champion. The 2018 built flipper did manage 1 victory in a tag team fight, but that W was accompanied by a pair of L's. These L's put Ignition down to 1 and 2 on weekend totals, pretty much leaving it, I want to believe, at 0. Nice and stagnant on the TCC rankings. Eruption, though, is really where things get spicy here. It left the weekend with a respectable 3-2 record, but I'm sure the defending Robot Wars champion certainly doesn't feel like a winner after this weekend. It lost the Extreme Robots Championship. That's right, after an offseason of holding the belt, dozens of defenses, and the longest reign of the title's short history, we saw Eruption hold down the gold in a pair of defenses versus Mega Mouse and rival robot Tectonic, but during the final show of the weekend in a 4-way scramble, we would see Eruption finally drop the strap in dramatic fashion. Midway through this 4-robot melee, Eruption would suffer a very rare out of the arena defeat when IRONCLADS 8 would shock some fans by sneaking up behind it, throwing it up and over midway through the fight. This left Eruption apart from its belt, but shockingly, the gold would not go to IRONCLADS 8, but instead the next team we're set to talk about here. And that team would be Team Quake. Yes, even though Will Thomas's team entered this event very pretty with a 3-point lead over every other team, the other rosters would manage to gain back a little bit of ground, but Team Quake did still lead with the Extreme Robots heavyweight title. Their roster would be an ensemble of Team Shock machines, tag team regulars, and even a free agent from the May competition. One robot which sadly was not on the team though this month would be Thor, one of the most impressive robots coming out of the Extreme Robots Brentwood weekend after a trio of impressive tag team outings. And I'd say its tag partner during those numerous outings, Mega Mouse, would probably be the robot to suffer most here out of every other robot on Team Quake's solid roster. The veteran Rodent would finish the week with 1 win and 3 losses, and that sole victory would surprisingly come from yet another tag team win with another new partner in Troublemaker. Perhaps tag teams are going to become its specialty? It's certainly worth a thought because it sure felt like the one-on-ones for Mega Mouse just have not been working as of late. Mega Mouse would blow not 1, but 2 championship opportunities on the weekend. After they lost the championship in the inaugural fight, that championship has just eluded Team Mouse, and it has to frustrate them. But speaking of Mega Mouse, one robot we really neglected to bring up at all during our last rundown was the aforementioned Troublemaker, who actually put together a decent 2-1 showing in June. Both of its wins would come in 2-on-2 action, once during the aforementioned battle with Mega Mouse, and once with Manta in a double knockout victory over the Saint and Ripper 6. This was probably one of the most bombastic fights of the entire weekend, and one I would fully suggest you to watch on your own time. It was one of the most impressive showings ever for Troublemaker, but sadly for Manta, it would be essentially its only good performance that weekend. The highly decorated Brit Flipper had a solid May, but even then I worried about his 2022 reliability woes coming back to haunt it, and it seems like that's exactly what happened here. It did muster a positive record at 2 wins and 1 loss, but Flipper issues definitely were still prevalent, most notably in that loss versus Weird Malice of all robots. That was a bit of a wild card defeat. And another big struggle bug in the squad would be the former Robot Wars Heat winner Aftershock, who we mentioned a little bit earlier as the loser by KO in the Spinners Championship match versus Zadkiel. This fight saw Aftershock enlist a rare strategy from Will Thomas, the use of ablative armor attachments, as in this title fight we'd see the blue spinner strap on essentially a wall to the robot with hopes of that bludgeoning bar on Zadkiel just deflecting off of it with the greatest of ease. But instead we would see some absolutely terminal damage done to the former Robot Wars grand finalist, enough apparently that, you have heard this right people, and this is a surprise to me, Aftershock is now officially retired. It's done. This development somehow slipped under my radar all the way to the point that I got to this spot on my script, to be brutally honest with y'all. But yes, according to Will Thomas on Team Shock social media, the team has no more weapon or drive motors which will work on the vertical spinning robot. So it looks like things are sadly back to the drawing board for Team Shock. We're going to miss Aftershock, assuming that it is actually calling it a career this time. We know that they teased it a little bit last year. And hopefully we can see them maybe make some replacements. You know, I did mention Sabretooth and Donald Thump both having some pretty impressive weekends. Maybe you can bring them to Team Quake. I don't know how it exactly works in Extreme Robots, but I think it's worth a thought. But now let's move on finally to the hottest British machine entering this June competition, Tectonic. In Brentwood, we saw Tectonic truly shake the arena, going 6-0 across 3 shows en route to a most valuable driver performance for Will Thomas. And entering June, it looked like all that hard work was going to be erased away because Tectonic kicked this damn thing off with 1 win and 6 losses. Talk about just flipping it completely over, man. Jesus. But in that final match, its 8th match of the weekend, just showing how much of a workhorse Tectonic is, it would be in a 4-way melee, and this would be a second opportunity at the Extreme Robots heavyweight title that weekend. And for the first time in Team Shock history, one of their robots would end up leaving here a champion, as Tectonic just managed to eke out the W via judge's nod to take home the gold. Team Quake now enters July with both the team competition lead and the Extreme Robots title. They have to be feeling on top despite a very tough weekend. But who's truly on top after 3 shows in Guildford may come to the surprise of a lot of fans here, but it's none other than 2023's brand new crew, the feisty flock of former free agents, Team Wolfpack. Shane Lale proved to all of us that the Ironaw family was still absolutely no joke after the new Ironaw 8 really put in some work in 2022, even going as far as winning the XR heavyweight title. And despite the absence of former FRA champion Ironaw 6 at this weekend event, the Yellow Pyramid still looked as consistent as ever. Bolster this on top of an upset from Brutus and promising performances by TR4 and even Thunderchild, and you have a team which managed to collect 2 points on the weekend, putting the Wolfpack just 1 point behind our current leaders, Team Quake. We kick this off by talking about the new robot on the block for Team Quake, a longtime friend of the Combot Collective, Thunderchild. Thunderchild and Team Ironclads are the amazing people who we source almost all of our video coverage from, and they were actually free agents last month, despite my mislabeling of them as Team Inferno. My apologies, guys. But free agents they are no longer. They have now found a home in the Wolfpack, and while the year kicked off kind of averagely for Thunderchild, the ship did right itself some here. 2 wins, 1 coming off of a Fight Club melee, and 1 coming alongside TR4 in a 2-on-2 battle. The underdog Flipper did suffer 1 loss by the hands of Ripper 7, but I think the crew will still take this as a positive result, all things considered. But now we move on to TR4, the aforementioned partner in that 2-on-2 match with Thunderchild. Another very solid week for the returning Robot Wars finalist. Last month delivered a solid debut, but this was just as great of a performance altogether. 3 wins and only 1 loss. The tag victory was over some low-tier robots in Weird Malice and Saint, but its real signature win would likely come in a more stacked doubles battle, where it fought alongside Ironaw 5 to defeat Inferno's Beast and Ignition. The Flipper power still looks incredibly solid on Alex's launching machine, But sadly, while the Great Flipper bolstered TR4's win, other flippers would hurt Brutus's weekend. That's right, let's move over to the Belgian Rambot. 3 losses to Extreme Robot's regular competitors here, including one by way of KO against Ripper 6. Though, one highlight here, it did manage that very impressive knockout over Galactus to keep the Belgian beast steady on the TCC overall rankings. Of course, full combat fights weigh a lot more than sportsman fights in our rankings. So it looks like the Brutus is going to be, just bouncing along, hanging in there a little bit longer. But now let's end with our captaining machines, including our own team MVP for the Wolfpack, Iron Awe 8. First, discussing Iron Awe 5, though, it appeared only minimally at this event, exclusively fighting alongside TR4, where it managed a victory over Team Inferno, but a loss versus Team Quake in doubles action. Iron Awe 5's flipper had its usual power, but not out of the arena power. That instead will be demonstrated, of course, by the rising flipper, Iron Awe 8. Shane Lale's excellent driving would propel the team's top robot to a 4-2 weekend with victories over machines such as Tectonic, Ignition, and of course Eruption, who would manage to throw out of the arena in that final championship fight. Not exactly sure how it didn't manage to leave with the title after that performance, but you just have to imagine that, like our recently fallen champ Eruption, Shane Lale and Iron Awe 8 now have to be very due for another one-on-one title bout opportunity against the middling Tectonic. But there we go, guys. 27 bots up, 27 bots down. We discussed the free agents with some surprises there in Sabretooth. And, of course, Donald Thump. Donald Thump, by the way, the biggest gainer for our TCC overall rankings this weekend. 3 full combat KOs. That's 24 points. And despite that, Donald Thump, I believe, is still in the negatives on our rankings. That just shows how much of a hole it dug for itself earlier on in the year. Bit unfortunate, but we also saw other teams. Team Divinty, still bottom feeders, but they now have the Extreme Robot Spinner Championship. I do personally believe Zadkiel is probably the best robot at Extreme Robots right now, period. Team Quake, no points over the weekend, but they did leave with the Extreme Robots heavyweight title. Tectonic, still a very solid robot, even though it had a bit of a tough weekend, all things considered. Team Inferno, our defending Extreme Robots team champions. They managed 1 point. They're making their way up the rankings a little bit, but did lose the title. And then finally, Team Wolfpack out of the arena against Eruption in a very big fight. 2 points on their season total. Very impressive for the new team. They are now only 1 show win away from tying with Team Quake and 2 away from taking the lead. When we reach the conclusion of this 3rd July Extreme Robots event, we will officially be at the halfway point of the XR season. They will take a 1-month pause in action, a little bit of a mid-season break, and then we're going to finish up the year with 3 more events in the season's second half. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully we can see more crazy robots compete in this Extreme Robot season. There's still some big names we haven't seen enter the arena. Robots such as Ominous, Two-Headed Death Flamingo, Monsoon, Magnetar. There's probably some flippers that I'm leaving out. I wonder where Iron Awe 6 and Thor went. It could be a lot more stacked. We'll just have to see what follows up and what ends up happening here over the next few months at Extreme Robots. Very impressed, though, with Shane Lale. Hopefully we can see him get that title opportunity. And I guess now with this Extreme Robot Spinner title, honestly, I'm not sure how I feel about it, because I feel like the one overall title should be a belt that you got to defend against any class of robot. If you want to declare yourself a champion, you should have to fight the spinners and everything. So I guess we'll just have to see what ends up happening there. I am very impressed, though, with Extreme Robots' step in the right direction. I already mentioned it last month, but we're getting so much fight footage from, Team Panoramic, Team Ironclads, of course. If you want to see all these fights in full, please check out Team Ironclads in the description below. We will have a link. We will also have Extreme Robots tickets linked below. It's so solid. They have done so well, making it easier to follow this year, I would say. So huge kudos to them for that. But now let's go ahead and wrap things up. Our next Extreme Robots rundown will be in August when we cover the July event. Our next rundown period, though, will be covering NHRL June, the 3 weight classes there. Not going to be the norm, but of course, like we mentioned, we did mess up that final Extreme Robots, NHRL stream, so we want to make up with it and do 3 more videos for you guys. We'll see how it goes. That's going to wrap it up for us here at the Combot Collective. follow the channel, of course, on all of our social media pages. You can follow our page on Facebook and Instagram. You can join our Discord server, hop in the community. That's where all of our video upload news goes down first. That's where all of the builders from UK, US, heavyweight, the flyweight are all chatting it up. And of course, right here on the YouTube channel. If you like this video, give it a like, give it a comment, give us your thoughts on Extreme Robots so far this year. Give us your constructive criticism. We always want to hear it. And if you really liked it, please press that subscribe button, ring the bell icon. We are now on the road to 600 subscribers. Hopefully we'll get there before the end of the year. I am tired. Let's go ahead and get you guys out of here. I got more stuff to do today. Repping my Nippon Ham Fighters jersey. Loving it. I am your host, Sterling Brown, and we will catch you guys on the flip side for Robot Combat tonight, TCC breakdowns, and TCC news.
This was the Combot Collective. Find us on Instagram and Discord.